After not getting a single scholarship offer in high school, I was forced to walk on to play in college. I had grown 5 inches during the summer and I had started practicing playing other positions as well, so I was ready to do whatever it took to play college football. First, I had to decide where I wanted to walk on, and San Jose State, Fresno State, and New Mexico all offered me a chance. I wanted to stay in California, so that eliminated the Lobos, and since the Spartans head coach promised me a chance at a scholarship if I performed well, I knew I had to go with San Jose State. During my first collegiate practice, I got to play on both sides of the ball, and I was clearly going to get a chance to earn playing time at multiple positions. Like in high school, I was really struggling to make tackles on defense, so I knew it would be hard to become a starter, but offensively, I felt like I could crack my way into the lineup because head coach Brett Brennan was giving me a chance at every position on the field. I was also still going for long runs every morning to build up my stamina, so we'll see how my freshman year as a walk-on goes. My first collegiate game ever was against South Dakota State, and I got to return a punt for 14 yards, and even though I watched almost the entire thing from the sidelines, with 2 minutes left, I got in because we were winning by so much, and I ended up getting my first tackle for San Jose State, which was a great start to my career. I knew that if I kept working hard at practice, playing everywhere, I'd eventually get bigger opportunities, and so far, my best play at practice has come when coach used me at wide receiver. But I still wasn't great at it, so I probably wouldn't see the field for a while since balls kept hitting off of my hands. In the future, I could see my role in the team being a utility player like Taysom Hill, but I also can play defense and return kicks, so I can do even more. I should have had my first interception at practice right here, and I ended up driving home afterwards ticked about it, but I was also just happy to get to see my family. If I was ever going to make it playing football, this was my chance to stand out. At the end of the game, I was going to play offense for the very first time, and my kick return got us to the 45. Then, just a couple of plays later, I made my first collegiate catch and run for 8 yards. However, the drive would end very quickly due to quarterback Chevin Cordero turning it over, and in all honesty, I was just glad to see the field for a couple of plays at the end of the game, but that doesn't mean I'm not striving to be a starter one day. At the next practice, on defense, I was starting to stand out, and I was getting close to a position battle at corner. Head coach Brett Brennan must really believe in me too, because he continues to let me work on my offensive skills as well, and I was becoming more comfortable catching passes. So far, college had been full of good experiences, and I was starting to get a lot better at returning kicks. I knew my speed was my ticket out, and I was just going to continue to improve. I felt like I was just inches away from taking multiple returns to the house, but at least we won another game, and the bus ride home was a great time. During our bye week, practice was my best chance to break out, and I was so close to earning a position battle at cornerback, which was exciting. Being a walk-on, I came into the season having nothing to lose, and I still hadn't hit the weight room enough, which did show on the field sometimes, and that stinks because if I would have made those tackles, I could have competed for a better spot. Instead though, that would have to come another week, and as a wide receiver, I was also starting to build up some trust from Brett Brennan, but even though I was starting to figure out how to make contested catches, it still wasn't enough to earn a position battle there either. So against Utah State, the only time I really saw the field was when I was returning punts, and all I could do was watch as we lost on a last-second field goal. Since I'm a walk-on, I didn't get to travel to Hawaii, but I wish I could have because I would have played in the blowout. Instead, I had to work delivering ice cream to little kids, and that motivated me to perform even better. With this tackle here, I earned my first position battle, and it would come next week, so I was pumped up. Meanwhile, on the offensive side of the ball, I was still showing out at practice, including a filthy 28-yard run where I broke one of my teammates' ankles and got so close to taking it all the way to the house. I was working on becoming a third-string halfback, and I just wanted to become one of the main guys on the roster. I was sick of watching away games from my house because they always seemed to be blowouts I could have played in, so I continued to work my butt off outside of practice, and due to that, I had a position battle on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball today. This was the opportunity I needed to get closer to seeing the field, but I was still far from perfect as a receiver, so that made this move so important as I toasted cornerback Kenyon Reed on my side of the field. I certainly didn't make every catch that I could have, but I did enough to win the battle, and now I was fighting to replace sophomore Mikael Greer at corner. I felt like I was always far away from the ball, and the one time Chevin Cordero actually threw it near me, he completely missed, so I didn't even get to touch a guy until there were only a few reps left. I sure wasn't going to get more playing time as a cornerback, but as a wide receiver, I was fortunate to see the field a little bit more against USC, and I made not one, but 2 catches against the Trojans. I even got to play one whole snap against Caleb Williams where he would take off for a first down, and at work later in the day, I was thrilled. However, I wanted to try to make some more money, so I downloaded PrizePicks, the sponsor of today's video, in the hopes I'd make the right picks. I knew sports pretty well, and it paid off for me, especially since I used code BOARD, which doubles your initial deposit up to $100. I put in 30, so I got 60 instead, and I used it to correctly predict multiple NBA pick'ems. They had every sport I could have ever imagined, and I was just thankful it was available in my state. If you also want to get PrizePicks, use code BOARD or the first link in the description to double your initial deposit. And now I have to get back to practice, where I had another opportunity to move up the depth chart as a cornerback. If I'm being completely honest, it didn't last long because I read Chevan Cordero like a book and outran every single player on the field to get my first ever pick 6 in practice. That was all it would take to win the position battle, and I was up to cornerback 4. I was also improving my receiving skills, so I was feeling very confident going into my game against Wyoming, where I started it off by taking a punt return all the way past the 50. Every so often, I would get out onto the field, and when I did, I made sure I didn't lose sight of who I was guarding, and then my big moment came where I rushed in and got my first ever collegiate sack. I literally forced a punt for myself to try and return, and then I pulled off the filthiest stop and go route of all time. This beautiful move got me my first touchdown ever, and because it was a blowout, I got to play a lot more than I normally would. I took advantage of that as I made 2 catches for the second game in a row, and I had a good night after that win. I did wake up a little bit confused, but when I checked my phone, I saw that coach was putting me on scholarship next year, so I rushed over to give him a huge thank you. I had finally made it as a walk-on, and I was carving out more and more playing time for myself. Now that I was on scholarship next season, I was ready to keep improving, and I finally had some security. On the last play of the half, I got so close to returning it, but I was stopped short, and still, I was doing well as my coverage skills kept getting better. I only played a couple of snaps on offense since we were losing, but that's okay, because on a huge 3rd and 2, I got the clutch stop as I had held the Rebels to just a field goal, so it gave my team a chance to win, and they ended up taking a lead with a minute left. Unfortunately though, that left me out there needing to stop them from getting in field goal range, and I didn't like the pressure of being on the field because their quarterback was insane. However, in the end, my teammate Kenyon Reed forced the game-winning interception, and that night we couldn't stop celebrating the win. I felt like the man walking around campus, and we were still in the conference championship race. If we wanted to win the Mountain West though, we had to beat San Diego State, and I almost really messed up here, but luckily I fought my way out of it. And since this game was really important, I didn't get to play in much of it, but when coach let me step onto the field, I always tried my hardest to make a play. With about a minute left, I watched my team get a much needed 3rd down stop, which held San Diego State to just a field goal, and then Brett Brennan gave me a chance to return the kickoff to get us in a good field position, but I failed him, and the offense also did as they couldn't get down the field quickly enough, so our conference championship hopes were gone. However, I was just happy to get to travel to road games with the team now as I went with them to Nevada. And against the Wolfpack, I really should have held on to the touchdown here, and I know it was thrown a little bit behind me, but that would haunt me all game. Luckily, midway through the 3rd quarter, I got to redeem myself as I made it into the end zone, and then I got to help my teammates lock up on the other side of the ball. I love that my role seemed to increase every week, and this is why. I showed off my top end speed, and then I dove for my 2nd touchdown of the game, which would solidify my spot on the roster for the rest of the season. I was easily having the best performance of my career, making another catch with a few minutes left, but as I went for my 3rd touchdown, I couldn't get in front of the ball before the Nevada corner, and although it stunk, I sure didn't act like it that night. Throughout the rest of the year, I didn't make much more progress in practice, but I had proven myself on the field in actual games, so it didn't matter that much, and getting Plan B here was a great choice. I was playing against my school's rivals, Fresno State, and I couldn't have gotten gotten off to a better start in front of the home crowd. I took this kickoff 94 yards to the house without being touched, and I was starting to really stand out as I caught this touchdown pass before it hit the ground. Even the refs didn't believe I did it, but all they could see on the review was me making a great play, and so far I felt like I was on pace to win player of the game, and this return all the way to the 40 should increase those odds. However, I'd only been able to make one tackle on defense, so I had to make plays on the other side of the ball, and Brett Brennan used me to run out the rest of the clock on the Bulldogs. We ended up beating our rivals, and not only did I win play of the game with my return, but I was also given my first ever player of the game award, which certainly made me the popular guy around campus as getting girls' numbers was never easier. My first ever bowl game was the famous Idaho Potato Bowl against Toledo, and I was hoping to get a house call on the opening kickoff, but I got stopped at the 50, so that was unfortunate, especially because it wasn't my best day playing coverage. I was trying my hardest to stick with junior Devin Maddox, but he was just quicker off of his breaks against me, and although it wasn't all my fault, I felt like I was the reason we were losing. However, we fortunately started to make a comeback later in the third quarter, and I was doing my part by finding the open spaces in the Rockets defense while bringing it in. With a few minutes left, I thought we were going to get a huge 4th and 8 stop, but we couldn't, and I wasn't out there for it, but we gave up a touchdown a few plays later, so it all came down to if we could score one more time, and I made this catch, which would set up the game-winning touchdown for my team. We won a bowl game in my first year, and after scoring 5 touchdowns, I couldn't wait to get into my sophomore season.